Hello, my name is Henrik. Glad you can join us live. In this live video, I'm going to be talking about what it takes to be a programmer. So, if you're wondering if you can be a programmer, I'm going to talk about some skills that you need to get into programming. And this is part two, or this is the second video in a 10-day series. I'll be teaching every weeknight from January 9 to January 20 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on this channel. And I hope it is pretty helpful. And by the way, if you've ever wanted to start learning how to program and you don't know where to start, I've got a free guide called my Personalized Finance App Programming Guide. Basically what it does, it takes you from zero coding experience and zero coding knowledge, zero coding background to building your first app. And it leads you step by step. It's a 12-step guide, and basically what it does is it takes your credit card transactions and then the program is going to categorize them in different budget categories. And then in each of these budget categories, you get to see how much you're spending with your credit card. So I think it's a really cool app, and it's something that I personally wanted to build for myself. So I think it would be nice for you to build your own app. So that's why it's called Personalized Finance App. So it's there in the link in the description. It should be there, and you can just download it there. And if you pay attention and do what it says, you will definitely learn some fundamental programming concepts. Also, before we begin, I plan to open up the live for Q&A. So if you have any questions, leave them for the end. All right, so let's get started. So what does it take to be a programmer? Can I be a programmer? Not me, but maybe this is something that you're asking yourself. Can you be a programmer? Can I be a programmer? Do I have what it takes to be a programmer? Am I smart enough, or am I talented enough? So I'm going to talk about some key skills that you need in order to be a programmer. So the first one is being good at logic. So in programming, in the programming world, we like to say this thing called garbage in, garbage out. Basically, what it means is that if you code a bunch, if your program is junk, like what you code is junk or garbage, then your program's gonna spit out garbage. So if you're not really good logically, if it doesn't have a good logical flow, your program, then the program's gonna spit out garbage basically at the end of the day. So basically what I'm saying here is that programming languages they're like verbal languages, but instead you're talking to a computer. So the computer is going to follow literally exactly what you're telling it to do. So every line of code you do, the computer will just do exactly that. So you have to be really good at logic, and there's a lot of logic involved in the lines of code. And if you've ever started to learn how to program, you'll start to see that very quickly. And computers, like I said, computers can't guess what you're trying to say like humans can. So they will follow you literally. And so you have to have a good logical flow in what you're telling the computer to do. And just for fun, I want to mention that for my Myers-Briggs, I did Myers-Briggs, the personality test. I did it back in my third year of college, I think, or second year of college. And I wasn't a programmer yet. I was still an engineering student, but basically I took the test and I found out that I am an INTP. And INTP has 3 nicknames. One of them is architect, and this is just someone who has an intuitive understanding of complex systems. So the idea of logic is that there's systems involved, and so you have an intuitive sense of the system. And then the next one is objective analyst. So when I analyze things, I try to be as objective as possible, try not to let emotions or subjectiveness come into play, and I want to make sure I do the right thing. And so that involves a lot of logic. So what is the most logical thing to do at this point in time? What is the thing that makes most sense to do? And so that's just my personality. And the last nickname for that personality, INTP, is the logician. So I think you can see that I'm very logic oriented. I want to do the right thing, and I want a logical way of doing things. And I think that's why I like math, because in math there's only one right answer. And in reading and in writing or English, you have to be there's a lot of subjectiveness involved. Like you have to be able to explain yourself well, which I guess involves some logic. But I like in math that you're very there's if you can prove something in a proof, then there's no way you can be wrong unless your logic is bad. But I like programming because growing up I've always liked games, and whenever you play a game, there's always a logic in the game. For example, chess is one game that I like to play. So I like solving chess puzzles, and that involves a lot of logic. You have to see, why is this move the best move that you can play at this point in time. So very logic based. But I'm not saying that you have to be good at math to be a programmer. I think even if you're good at writing and you're good at grammar, or maybe yeah, if you're good at grammar, then you can be good at programming, because I think grammar also has rules that you need to follow, and so there's a lot of logic that's involved there as well. And also when you write, you have to make an argument. You have to be persuasive. So logic is very a big part, and that's what something I enjoyed too. Even though I was a math person and a science person, I also liked writing my own papers because I can make a logical case for something that I believe in. So that's the first one, logic, being good at logic. You need to be good at logic if you are going to program. Second one is self-learning. So learning how to program. Because in programming, there's so many different tools and there's so many different developments in the programming world. You're going to need to grow in what tools. You can't stick to one tool. You have to be able to adapt and learn other tools. And also, when you're programming, eventually you'll come to a point where you need to implement something that you don't know how to do. So this was me in my whole career, basically, in programming. When I joined my company, in my first job, I only knew one programming language, and that was C. That was the language that I learned. And when I got there, they gave me C++ code. They gave me MATLAB code. Those were the first. That's the first code I looked at when I joined the company. But MATLAB, I already had experience in MATLAB, but I didn't actually have experience in C++. But C++ is very similar to C, so I had some vague idea of what was going on. And then they gave me a project where I had to code in Java and Python, and yeah, I was doing Java at that time, and that was the main thing I was doing. But I also did Python and C++ for other parts of that project. So yeah, I had to learn on the spot. I had to look up how do you code this in Python, or what does this function do in Python, or what does this do in Java, or how do I code this. I was working on a GUI for Java, so I had to look up exactly how does that work, how does my program work. So I think knowing how to self-learn is really important. I also had to learn Ruby on Rails and Gradle. I had to learn stuff like that for web development. And then eventually they gave me C again, and because I had to work with an Arduino. So basically in my whole job I had to, I've never worked with an Arduino before that. So basically in that whole job I had to self-learn. And I think it also might be because I was in research. So we had to do different. Each project had their own implementation, and each one had their own proof of concept. But you get the idea. When you program, you're going to have to do things that you don't know how to do, and so you have to look up how to do something, and that's how you get better at programming. And in your when you're programming, you're eventually bound to eventually have to look up how to do something. And also, and like we mentioned yesterday in the live yesterday, programming is always changing. And like my colleagues who were coding in the 80s and the 70s, they had to adapt. They had to self-learn more advanced way or more up-to-date ways of programming, and the things that they were doing before they didn't have to do anymore. So that's the second one, self-learning how to program, you have to teach yourself how to program. And the third one is adaptability slash patience. Basically, I think if you put adaptability and patience together, it's called flexibility. You have to be flexible, and this kind of goes with my last point, how you need to be able to adapt. So the reason why I say patience is important is because there were many times in my coding career where I was given a code base, and I would be staring at it for days and days and not knowing anything, not knowing what to do. And basically at that point, you have to have a lot of patience. And also there were also many times where they asked me to implement something that I had no clue how to do. So they would say, Henrik, I need to do this. Can you program this? Can you make a prototype for this? And I had no clue how to do it. So, but because it's my job, I had to just say, yeah, I'll work on it. I'll see what I can do. And I would have days where I would just do research. I would just look up the whole day what is one way you can do this? What is one way you can do this? And I would look up how to do stuff. So you have to be patient, and with the process, you have to be patient that you may not know how to do something. But I think the key is that you have to remember is if you're given enough time, you will eventually get there. So that's the key, and that's how you can become patient. So those are the three, just to reiterate, those are the three skills. The first one is you have to be good at logic. Second one is you have to self-learn, and that'll be I'll expand more on this topic in another live, I think next week. So yeah, logic, self-learn, and being flexible or being adaptable or patient. I think every programmer will tell you this, that there are times when a program is hitting an error, or there's a part in the program that there's a bug and you can't fix it, and you'll spend many days, even like a week or even more than that, you can't figure out what's going on. And at those times you just have to be patient. And even in the learning process, when you're starting to learn how to code, you just got to be patient. And even if you download my guide to program your first app, you're gonna hit points where you might get frustrated or you get stuck. Then you just gotta be patient at that point. All right, so that's my talk for tonight. Those are the things I want to talk about for what it takes to be a programmer. Those three skills is what it takes to be a programmer. I think if you have those three skills, then I think you can learn how to program. So I love to open it up for questions. If you have any questions about what I said, feel free to leave them in the chat. And what about you? What of these three skills are you good at already? Or what of these three skills do you need to work on? Feel free to let me know in the chat, or even in the comment section. Feel free to let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. What are the three skills that of the three skills, which one do you need to work on, and which ones do you need to are you already good at? And even if I miss some, maybe you're already programming and you already have some idea about what it takes. Maybe I'm missing one that you think is an important skill to have. Leave it in the comments or leave it in the chat and let me know. Also, if you haven't downloaded it already, I mentioned this in the beginning of the live, please download my personalized finance app programming guide. Basically, it takes you from no coding experience to building your first app. And I think this is how I learned how to program the most. And even in my job, when they gave me a code, I would just stare at it until they gave me a task. I think when you have a task, you have a goal in mind, there's something that you can do, then that's when you start to learn really fast. That's how I learned how to code, and that's how I learned how to program when I was in university, and that's also how I learned how to understand the code base that I was given, is by being provided a task and doing something. So I think this guide will be really helpful for you, and it'll be a good start for you if you're learning how to program. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for spending time and listening to what I had to say. If you're catching this on the replay, leave your comments and your questions below in a comment. I'm going to be engaging with the comments and questions for the next coming days and weeks. So I'd love to continue to hear what you guys have to say, and I want to hear more from you so that I can provide better content for you guys. All right.